Welcome to tonight's video. This is part 2 of revising strategies for ideas. I listed the key qualities so you could see where this is coming from. One major aspect of the ideas trait of good writing is that you have actually thought about how to focus it, zeroing in on that one small part of a big idea. Can your reader sum your idea up in a single sentence? Remember that was a problem with Chicken Soup for the Soul? We're talking about information that captures your idea best, and we're talking about, have you given it some thought? Have you included everything in your paper that your reader is going to need to know? Again, last night I talked about 2 or 3 strategies. I talked about the pizza and the writing about the pizza or the slice, and I talked about the ladder of abstraction. So tonight I want to talk about finishing about revision strategies. So I'm going to talk about question conferencing, and I'm going to talk about looping, or how to find a focus by doing more free writing in your notebook. The third strategy is good writing from questions. Some of you are already using questions as a strategy. I know as I sat down going around the room the last couple of days, some of you really didn't know what you wanted to say. Some of you had a topic, but you had no idea where in the topic you wanted to begin, and I suggested that you try with questions. Every piece of writing begins with answering a question. If you look at the quote from Madeleine L'Engle, she's the author who wrote A Wrinkle in Time, The Wind in the Door, An Acceptable Time. She says questions are more important than answers. The writer is looking for openings, not closings. Look for the questions that tug hardest on your pencil. And she's right. If all we wanted was answers in nonfiction, I could go to an encyclopedia, or I could type it in and search on Google. But in writing nonfiction text, the point is not just for you to give an answer. The point is for you to give your answer. Every piece of writing begins by answering a question, but some questions make you want to write more than others do. Those are the great questions. Great questions come from curious minds. What do you wonder about? What are you passionate about? What interests you? What do you find yourself thinking about when you can't sleep at night? Another thing about great questions is once you have one, you find that they're like popcorn. One leads to another, and that one leads to another, and that one leads to another, and that one leads to another. Another thing about great questions is they don't always come easily. Sometimes you really have to sit and think about it. It comes from a deep silence because you have to dig down. You have to go under the surface to find great questions. And finally, even though this is nonfiction, great questions have more than one answer. If it was nonfiction that everybody knew the answer to, who'd read it? Sometimes great questions don't have an answer, just your proposal of an answer. A way to get at these great questions is through a question conference. And a question conference is going to lead you to ways that you can narrow your focus down, narrow your topic down into a small piece of focus, like we talked about with the pizza strategy. Now, some of you have already done a question conference with yourself. Ryan, this is for you. You and I did this in class. I think that Tiffany, I also talked about this with you today. So in honor of you two, let's say that our topic is music, but we're just not sure what we want to say about music. You're going to go back to your writer's notebook. Yes, your writer's notebook is also a place to revise. And you're going to find the next clean page. You're going to put your topic, music, at the top of the page as the heading. Or maybe in Tiffany's part, it might be heavy metal or rock. And then you're going to write down all the questions that come to mind. Please don't censor at this point. There's nothing too silly. There's nothing too obvious. There's nothing too trite. Take what comes and be glad it's coming. When you honestly can't think of one more question, obvious or not, then stand back and look at your list. Which questions tug at your pencil the most? Which questions make you want to write? Those are the questions you're going to focus on. There's a few things you can do with those. Those questions could be the questions that send you into research. Another thing you can do with those questions is try turning it into a statement, a complete sentence, and then try starting a new draft with that statement. Try using that sentence and asking yourself, all right, if I begin my writing here, where am I going to end up? Let's just do this as a sample. So I'm going to start with music because that's what I was thinking about. Let me see. Why was Mozart a big deal? What about Mozart that made him so special? What is Baroque music? Is there any Baroque music in modern music? There's music behind this today, but I hope it's not too loud. What's the difference between a harpsichord and a piano? What jobs are there for a musician? What kind of training do you need to be a professional musician? What other kinds of music are there? Blues is one of my favorite kinds of music. What's the history of blues? What makes good blues music? Is there a connection between blues and jazz? What's the difference between blues and jazz? I also like reggae. What's the history of reggae? How did Marley get started? What's Marley's connection to Peter Tosh? How does modern reggae compare to Class 2 old school reggae? Who's big in reggae now that Marley is gone? I could go on and on like this, but I don't want the tape to go too long. Of all of the stuff that interests me, I'm interested in where reggae came from, and I'm interested in the difference between blues and jazz. So those two are the two that I'm going to go in and think more about. Maybe from here I'm going to choose to research. I'm going to research blues and I'm going to compare it to jazz. Maybe I'm going to do an analysis of a blues song and look for jazz roots in it, or compare a jazz song and look for blues roots in it. Maybe I'm going to go back and try and connect the history of reggae to the history of Jamaica. Maybe I'm going to go back and look at the life story of Bob Marley. Maybe I am going to, maybe what I might want to do, let me erase some of this so that I can make some space for myself. Nope, no eraser. All right, so maybe what I want to do then is maybe I want to turn this into a sentence. Maybe I want to say something like, blues and jazz have a deep connection in history. Now, I don't know if that's true, but I sure can go in and do the research and see if it is true. So that if you use the strategy, it gives you another opening in your topic, another place to begin, and that's what we're looking for with these strategies. All right, now, why won't the page forward? Come on, guys, this isn't funny. See, I was worried about there being illustrations, and I can't even make it work. Okay, strategy number 4, the last one for tonight, is another strategy that works on writing, but this time it's a little bit different. This is more like free writing. It comes from Peter Elbow, and Peter Elbow discovered that a lot of writers don't have a clue what they want to say when they sit down to write, and the only way to figure it out is to just write. So this next strategy is also a way of revising in your writer's notebook, and it's called looping. It's a lot like free writing with a little variation. Here is the strategies for looping. This time you're going to choose a general topic. I could go to jazz. I could go to blues. I could go difference between jazz and blues. I could write Bob Marley on the top of my page. Any of that came from my questions. Then I'm going to find a timer and set it for about 5 or 6 minutes. And then I'm going to free write, just like I would when we do it in class. Your hand keeps moving. You don't rewrite. You don't reread, you don't cross out, you don't correct, you just keep going. And if you can't think of anything else, you write, I can't think of anything else, until you can think of something else. When the timer goes off, then go back and reread what you've written. And here's where it's a little different from free writing. You're going to reread, you're going to look for words or phrases or sentences that make you want to write more, that tug at your pencil. You're going to skip a line. And this time, you're going to start with the word, the phrase, or the sentence that you identified. And you're going to set your timer again. You're going to write, for 5 or 10 minutes. Same exact way. Free writing, your hand keeps moving, you don't reread, you don't edit, you don't rethink until the timer goes off. Now you're going to reread again, but you're going to reread a little differently. This time you're going to reread for patterns. You're going to look at what's come out of the second free write, and you're going to ask yourself, what's come out that's new? What surfaced that I didn't realize I had in my head? Has something come up that I hadn't considered before that I want to follow up on? Is your focus here? Another way of looking at that, has something come up that absolutely is not your focus? So that whether you found your focus or not, at least you know what you're not going to focus on. You can do this looping again if you need to, or you can take what you've learned and use one of the other strategies I've given you. You've been given a lot of information tonight. Both strategies are based on questions and making connections. They add to and help you link to the pizza and the ladder of abstractions from our last class. I hope that they help you refine your pattern refine your work plan when you come to class tomorrow, so that if you choose to revise, you can say, I'm going to revise by looping. I'm going to revise by looking at I'm going to see what kind of slices I have on my pizza. I'm going to revise by having a question conference. If you still don't have a focus, you can use question conferences and looping the same way. All right, there's a little bit of difference in your directions tonight. I would like you to watch the video like always. Again, like always, I expect you to be an active viewer. If you need to slow it down, if you need to rewind it, if you need to fast forward it, if you need to pause it, if you need to watch it more than once, be an active watcher and do whatever you need to get the information. Then I want you to make sure that you take notes. I've noticed in all 6 classes that a lot of you are skipping the notes and going directly to your summary. Please don't do that. A summary is an overview, and it's not going to give you enough to support your growth as a writer. You can do Cornell notes, 2-column notes. You can make a graphic organizer. You can make boxes and bullets. Whatever works for you, as long as you take notes. Once you have notes, then write your summary. Your summary is an overview, a restatement of the most important information in your notes. And here's where things are different tonight. Instead of writing your summary out, I want you to go back into NiceNet to the conferencing link. And I want you to find the blog for your block. It'll say Blue 1, Video 2. Go on there, and that's where I want you to post your summary. I'll check them online. Remember, you're also going to need a question, and we are going to look at that in class. Record your question under your notes, and remember that you're in your ISN. I hope you like this. Played a little music. I hope it's not too loud. No dogs, no cats, no announcements. So we'll see how this one goes. I'll see you tomorrow.